Hello, what's going on? Jason Bay here. Welcome to Blissful Prospecting. In this podcast, I have conversations with reps, sales leaders, and other experts to teach you how to turn complete strangers into paying customers. I'm excited for our guest today. We're going to be talking about winning the relationship, not the deal. Our guest is Casey Jacox, who is a sales and executive leadership coach. He's got a ton of experience as a sales leader and as a rep. And we're going to talk about a couple things and probably a lot of other things that we didn't plan on talking about, but curiosity and listening, ditching your ego, vulnerability, versus leading by fear, all topics I'm a big fan of. Casey, it's good to have you on the show.
I'm honored. Thank you for having me on. We got to give a shout out to Tina Lasasso for making this connection happen.
Yeah. Shout out to Tina. And I don't know, the thing that I sort of, I don't know what it is, but talking to another person from the Pacific Northwest, because you're up, near Seattle, it's definitely something that we have in common. How do you, just out of curiosity, where are you from actually? Are you from Seattle, that area?
Yeah. Just south, the area called like Renton or Fairwood area. And now I live in a city called Maple Valley, which is just southeast of Seattle.
So do you feel like growing up in this area has influenced how you, like your leadership style, how you sell, anything like that? Because you've sold to people all over the world and led, people all over the world.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more, I grew up middle class, like didn't take a bunch of, didn't travel a bunch of places. A lot of it, vacation for us was camping or maybe one or two plane rides. As I think about, what shaped me and how I sell to people, it was definitely sports. It was definitely my parents, a few good lessons. I can think of a lesson my mom taught me when I was 11 years old, to lessons of, a massive injury I had my senior year in high school that impacted where I went and played football in college, to just, coaches and teachers that taught me about truly what hard work was, not telling me, but like showing me, and, using their own vulnerabilities to help me feel safe to share what I wanted to do. And so those lessons I've applied as a dad now, but really as a leader of teams when I was in corporate, and then now when I'm working with organizations across the United States. So that's what how I'd answer that one.
Well, you got to tell me, you said you learned a lesson from your mom when you were 11, probably one of many, but did something in particular come to mind for you?
Yeah, it's about being honest. So I don't think I've ever told this on a podcast, but here we go. So 11 years old, first time playing baseball against overhand, bringing the heat, no T-ball stuff. And the dude on the mound, I swear he was like 7 feet 4 inches tall and just threw like 7,000 miles an hour. And like his first three pitches were just everywhere. I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm literally going to, if I get hit by that, I'm done. Just lights out. And so I quickly went into okay, how can I not have to face this guy? Oh yeah, stomach ache, faking a stomach ache. So I quickly I take that back. I had one at bat and I walked. Thank God I didn't get hit, but he's throwing balls over the backstop, almost hitting me. I was scared for my life. And so I go to the fake stomach ache, get out of the game. I'm like, sweet, I'm safe. And in the car, I end up telling my mom, hey mom, she's like, did you have fun? I'm like, yeah, I had fun. I'm like, hey, I was going to tell you, I really didn't have a stomach ache, mom. I faked it because that guy was super scary to bat against. She's like, you did what? And I was like, uh-oh. And she's like, okay. I'm like, well, why? She goes, well, we'll talk about it when we get home. And I remember, I'm 46. How do I remember this? I had to call my coach personally and tell him what I did and apologize and tell him I'll never do it again. And then the next practice, my coach had me tell the entire team what I did in front of them all and own it and apologize. And it was such a lesson of, being able to attack your gaps. We all have them. Knowing that it's more than you, and when you do mess up, own it, because it'll quickly go away once you own it. And facing the music. I didn't want to have to do that, but it was a quickly lesson of always tell the truth and set expectations. So yeah, I still remember that to this day.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I also hear in that too, that it's almost like it's okay to be scared, but it's not okay to not be courageous.
Yeah, I love that. So one of my mentors, a guy named John Kaplan. He had a great quote. I don't know if he said it or someone else said it. He said, "It's okay not to know every answer. It's just not. It's okay not to know every answer. It's just not okay not to do anything about it." And as I think about like a sales audience, how many times do we as sellers, a leader asks us a question or a client asks us a question and we're scared to say, "I don't know," because we want to look smart. We want to look like we know our stuff and we're the seasoned rep and we're the best. But sometimes the power is saying, "Hey, great question, Jason. I'm not sure. Let me get back to you by the end of the day." Just that, saying "I don't know" and following up allows you to build trust, show them that you followed up, show them that you listened, which are usually 2 or 3 great skill sets that most sellers don't have.
Yeah, dude, I'm so like, where do we take this conversation with you? Because there's so many, like, what I like about your stuff and just your approach is a lot of it's based around this foundation of just being a solid human being. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think that so many people resonate with it. But one of the things that you talk about in your book is like the first chapter, I believe, or the second chapter is about following the golden rule.
Chapter 1.
Yeah, and this I think kind of segues into that. Like, how did you come up with this? Like, when did you first realize, as you were, sort of coming up through the ranks and then also leading sales reps, that it's like, hey, all these selling tactics are really, really good, but none of this stuff works unless we're just like people that follow through and do what we're supposed to do. you know,
Yep.
how did you kind of come to that? If there was a realization that is like, oh God, like this is the stuff I need to focus on. Yeah, the tactics and strategies are important, but like this is kind of the missing link.
Well, 2 things come to mind. One, I think about I'm going to go Uncle Rico on you from Napoleon Dynamite college football days. I think playing quarterback,
Yeah.
right? If I was an a-hole and treated my linemen bad, treated my team bad, they're not going to want to play hard for me. They're not going to block for me. They're not going to trust me on game day. So for me, that same mindset as a seller, as a teammate, I took into the business world. Now, early in my sales career, I saw top performers at the companies I were I didn't think super nice people. They were arrogant. They thought that their didn't stink. They at times treated people poorly. And in my mind, I was like, why? There's got to be a better way. And I was always motivated by, if I think about, again, Uncle Rico moment here, like when I was in the weight room, I was like a 6'1", buck 90, buck 95 quarterback.
Benching 1,000 pounds, that type of thing.
I could bench. No, I benched like 305 was the most I ever benched. You didn't think it. There's like, no, how'd the dude do that?
Yeah.
And I love like being under the radar as a stronger quarterback at the time. And the same thing is in sales. Like when people would meet me at like these awards trips or networking events, like, "Oh, wait, you're Casey?" Oh, I was like, usually like top performers are arrogant, and just it's all about them. And for me, again, the position of humility that was driven to me from my parents to coaches to in business, I never wanted to be about the team, not me, because in the end, we're all replaceable, whether we think we are or not. And I thought, I want to be around people that were going to be positive and bring me joy. And that's how and I think it's just a great way to start the day because you have a better mindset when you're bringing positivity.
Yeah. The thing that really, kind of sticks out to me about that is God, I don't know, the arrogant top performer thing. I see this a lot in business too. Actually, it seems like so hard to find people that perform at a really high level that are not absolute jerks. There's a lot of them out there, but are you intentional? Like, how intentional are you about like the people that you surround yourself with, like outside of your family? Like, are you pretty intentional, like work wise or, your professional network, that type of stuff? Like, how intentional are you about who you hang out with?
I think very intentional. I like spending time with people who make me better. I like spending time with people who have areas of their like life game I wish I was better at. I like spending time with people who have, who aren't afraid to challenge me in a healthy way. Not to be, again, like an arrogant weirdo, but like someone who can just say, "Hey, I don't know if I agree with that case." And I respect them enough that I want to be challenged. So, and it's funny this is like such a stereotype, but the very first I'm an unnamed person, but I will say that one of the top performers that I had to compete against early in my career, I was like, I mean, of all the 1980s Miami Vice stereotypes, like cigarette boat, tight pants, chest hair, like his wife had enormous fake, you know what, like of all the stereotypes. And if someone's listening and that, I apologize, you're probably a nice person, but I'm like, there's no need to show the chest fuzz in a meeting. That was cool in 82 and it's not, I think 2022, they don't want to see that anymore. Right. So
that chest fuzz, dude.
See, and I like to have fun, which I know, like when I've listened to one of your episodes, you said like one of your top 2 things is like have fun and kick ass. Or I think I'm summarizing, but like as a quarterback, I want to have fun in the huddle. I want to have fun. Because if we're not having fun, then we're not going to be our true authentic self. And one of the corny dad jokes I like to use, but I love the piece of advice. They said the number one reason that Jason should be Jason and Casey should be Casey, because everybody else is already taken.
Yeah.
Right. So just be, and I think when we are our true authentic self, which is what chapter 5 is about, you can just sell freely. You can be yourself, and you're not worried about saying the perfect thing. And I think I've found that level of authenticity, sometimes to a fault, and I wish I had a filter at times, like hence I just said the word chest fuzz on a podcast, but sometimes like those random things help connect people and bring a normalcy to the conversation or relationship.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little more. The ditching the ego part. Because I think that we sort of talked about this before we hit record, that there's kind of a couple lenses to winning the relationship, not the deal. Like as a rep, winning the relationship, but also as a sales leader, winning the relationship, with the rep, I think is kind of an interesting, kind of take on that. But a big part of what I hear you talk about just in this conversation, a lot of it's just, being able to lower and ditch your ego to the point to where you're not afraid to ask for help. That's something I've personally struggled with a lot in the last couple of years that I've just worked on through therapy mostly is, I just have a decades of habits and a lot of it, I played sports too, football, baseball, not to the level that you did in college, but a lot of that was like, it was kind of reinforced in you to be a man, and not like be a lone wolf, kind of thing is what was reinforced a lot for me. A lot of just sort of toxic leadership style. But with the ditching the ego and letting your authentic self shine, can you tell us a little bit more about how you think about that? How someone listening that's like maybe struggles with that a little bit, like, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I'd tell you, I mean, I've already referenced 3. This is my 3rd Uncle Rico reference. So this is like maybe setting a record on your podcast. But where I feel like I got really good at that was playing college football and watching film.
Yeah.
So we'd play a game on Saturday and I might go, 25 completions out of 37 attempts, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. We win the game. However, the incompletions that I did not play well, I would get coached hard in front of my teammates. Casey, why was your footwork wasn't right? Let's rewind it again. Casey, why'd you throw at that person? What was your mindset? What were you thinking? I don't know, coach. Give me an answer. I know you can think of something. Okay, well, I said this. Well, I don't know. What about this? And so it was just back and forth. And I got taught that it's okay to say, hey, I'm not sure. Tell me what I should do. And that same skill set of being coached in front of your teammates applied to me right when I went into the business world. And as I think about, ego, great book by Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy. I reference it, quoted him a couple of times in my book. So I think the definition for leadership and the definition for building relationships requires the 2 skill sets, which is humility plus vulnerability equals relationship, or humility plus vulnerability equals leadership. The best leaders I've been around are humble enough to say, I don't know. They're vulnerable, or they're vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, or they're humble enough to say, hey, what do you think we should do? Susie or Rachel or Bob. And they're not afraid to go first. So we think about like sales leaders and role playing, which when I say the word role play, everybody who's a younger seller just got nervous all of a sudden. Oh my God, but pro athletes practice, pilots practice, doctors practice, race car drivers practice, but yet we're in sales. We're that elite, Jason. We don't need to practice. We can show up and wing it. But imagine if our customers knew we would just wing it. And if we called our customers to say, hey, you know, Jason over at ABC company, he's a good guy. Yeah, I love him. He's a great guy. Guess what he does? He practices on you, Mrs. Customer, and he has no idea what your business does. And he shows up like 3 minutes before. So I think like that mindset of being coachable, realizing that if you can share your own stories of failure first, will get people to open up. Like, for example, I had a coaching call this morning, and we were working on that around trying to adopt a new mindset that would impact their business. And I explained to them, I said, listen, guys, the things I'm talking to you about and coaching you on, I have the same gaps, right? Like I had a new client that requested something from me that I've never done before. I know I can do it. I don't know what to charge. So I'm going to have to ask for help from people in my network. And so I think like me walking the walk or showing that vulnerability of saying, hey, I'm going to need help too. I found it really opened up the door for them to have a very interactive session with me. They weren't afraid to say, I don't know. I remember I even called on one of them to go to role play first and practice. And I said, here, I'll be the client, and then we'll switch roles, and I'll be someone from your company. You be the client. You could be as mean to me as you want. This is a safe spot. And she got stuck when she was the seller to me. And I said, phone a friend. I'm not judging you. Get help. And so she literally looked around and we had fun. And I said, the power of doing that without ego, we just practiced. We got better. We didn't lose a customer. No one's judging. There's going to be days you practice amazingly. And there's going to be days you suck. But the best part about that is it goes back to mindset. We each one of us on the earth get 1,440 minutes, and then that clock resets. So I always tell people, like, if you're going to have a bad day, that's fine, but just don't let that bad day lead to tomorrow. Because 2 bad days in a row equals a bad week, then a bad month, then a bad quarter, then a bad year, and all of a sudden I'm on a performance plan. What the hell just happened? So the ego is a killer, man. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it totally does. Ego is, it was a really big realization for me once I realized that the reason I don't ask for help is because of my ego. I made this story up in my head that I wasn't asking for help because I didn't want to bug the person. And really what it was is I didn't want to confront the fact that I have to rely on other people, like including my fucking wife, dude. You know what I mean? I need her in my life for our marriage to function properly. And then when we have kids, especially, we need each other. There's nothing wrong with letting someone help you. You know what I mean? That was a really big thing for me. But really a lot of what you're talking about is this, it's like raising the standard, and having a standard of excellence where I don't practice on prospects. I practice before I make a cold call, before a sales call. I practice this stuff. I rehearse it. It's this, I'm going to be world class, at what I do sort of thing. How do you, as a sales leader, or I'm just even in your client work, when you're working with these sales leaders, can you talk more about how you create an environment where people do feel comfortable opening up and being vulnerable, especially in those sales team dynamics, people on the team or in their all hands calls or whatever it might be? How do you think about, as a leader, creating an environment where people are really comfortable opening up and being vulnerable?
I touched on a second ago, but I'll share it again. I think the power of that is going first, not being afraid to share my own gaps. If I'm going to ask them to do something, I say, hey, before for example, when I interview people on my podcast for dads called Quarterback Dadcast, if I interview somebody and at the end of most episodes, I ask the dad to say, hey, talk about an area of your dad game that's a struggle for you, that you're not your best version of yourself. And I go, but before you answer, let me go first. My gap's patience. My dad struggled with patience. He passed it down to me. Sometimes I find myself sweating the small stuff, having the dumb freak out moment at home. What are you doing, dude? Why are your kids are going to think you're a dipshit. Why would you do that? And then what do? Do I just suck it inside, or do I stop and then say, hey, you know what, guys, Ryder, Riley, my kids, That wasn't good. That was not the best version of dad. My bad. You know, and own it. Teach your kids it's okay to apologize. Teach your kids that we aren't perfect. And I think as it relates back to sales, whether I'm coaching one person or I'm coaching a group, I remind them, I say, listen, this is just one man's opinion. I'm not going to try to convince you to do anything. Everything I share with you, I'm not making up. It's through 20 years of street fights. It's my own gaps, my own failures, or my few years of success. And it's your choice if these problems that you're showing me are big enough that you want to make a change. If not, if I'm trying to convince you or your boss is trying to convince you, you're never going to change. But once you convince yourself, just like I think in sales, the best sellers never sell. They just ask great questions to make other people sell themselves. That's the same thing with coaching. My boy Voltaire, 1700 philosopher, French philosopher, I think he was a little bit of a sexist, so I'll bring him more to this day. He said, a man, I'm going to say, or a woman, ladies, I got your back. A man or woman is not judged by his or her questions, but by was not judged by his or her answers, but by his or her questions. And so I think in coaching, when we make people think, and as a seller or sales leader, I always told my reps and myself, I want to hear 2 words in every meeting, which is great question. If I hear that, I know it was a successful meeting because I knew I made the client think. Yeah. And when you ask a great question, allow silence to set in, sellers. And it's uncomfortable. Like I always have this thing called the 3-tap rule in virtual selling. I might ask a question that I know it's going to make someone think. I'll tap my finger 3 times. And I won't talk until I finish tapping my finger to give them time to think. Because if you don't, it's a wasted rep. It's a wasted question that you had a chance to really make the client think, differentiate yourself. So those types of mindset things I talk to my clients about, but I think it revolves all the way full circle here, Jason, just about not being afraid for me to go first to talk about what I struggle with. You know, I think the last thing I'll end with here is, as the author of that book, When the Relationship, Not the Deal, I've read the book 7 or 8 times through the editing process, or when I did the Audible version. I've learned something from myself every time I read it.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful stuff. It's a little embarrassing as the author that why I shouldn't be learning from myself. But the key takeaway for me that I hope others at home take away is these 6 things that I wrote about aren't rocket science. They're just simple reminders that we need to focus on when things don't go the way we want them to do it. Like if a deal's stuck, if someone's not calling you back, if the customer's confused, like all the things, it's whose fault is it? Is it theirs or is it, no, it's ours. We've done something incorrectly, and let's challenge ourselves to kind of dig deep in discovery, which I believe that's where deals are won or lost always. And if a deal ever gets stuck, rewind the tape, go back to discovery. Anyway, I love this stuff. It's fun to talk about.
Oh yeah. This is, I love that theme of going first. It's something I do a lot when I'm training reps, is I will always make myself the butt of the joke. If I'm going to talk about call reluctance, I'm going to open that by talking about how I was really nervous before hopping on this training call. I was reluctant to do this thing, and good thing all of you are invited because I might not have showed up,
Like it.
And I think that, I think that that's super important. So we've talked about follow the golden rule. We've talked about ditching the ego and letting your authentic self shine. You have a chapter about setting proper expectations. So tell us more about that.
Chapter 2, super simple. Most sellers struggle at it. So for example, if we're recording at 12 o'clock today and I'm running late, I have 2 choices. Either I should show up 5 minutes late and I show you no respect and just assume Jason had nothing else to do. Or if I know I'm going to be late at 11:56, I'm going to send you a text or an email saying, Jason, hey, it's Casey with Winning the Relationship. My apologies. I'm going to be running about 2 or 3 minutes late. Just want to give you a heads up. That alone, I find, is uncommon. Yeah. Setting expectations, whether you're in product sales or I came from the staffing and consulting industry. If you committed to a client or a prospect that you're going to do something and you're not, and it's not going to happen, some sellers choose let's just be silent and pretend it's going to go away and solve itself and hope and cross our fingers, which creates just massive anxiety in your stomach, and you'll probably have an ulcer one day. I would not choose that route. Or attack it head on. And I talk about an example in the book where I was a part of our largest deal in my former company's history. I was also 3 months later a part of the biggest disaster in our company's history. We had a $20 million deal that we won that was freaking amazing. And then 3 months into it, the client lost budget, had a massive financial mix-up somehow. And I had to make a choice of saying, what are you doing? Like blame them, get mad. Or I said, hey, it's all right. We'll figure it out together. I know you didn't wake up saying, man, I can't wait to lose budget and ruin Casey's month and Casey's year and the publicly traded companies, screw them. Like stuff happens, right? And so I thought, what a great opportunity to show them I'm about the relationship, not just this transaction. And so the expectation part is now I had to I'd either tell my leaders, and this was like a big enough deal that would like hit like as a publicly traded company, like Wall Street stuff. I was freaked out. I was like, shoot. And one of my former boss, he was a great listener. And I called him and I said, I'm not having a good feeling there, here, boss. And I think we're going to lose a lot of this deal and we're going to have to lay some people off. He's like, dude, wasn't your fault. You didn't do this on purpose. We'll get through it. And this was the first time I actually worked for someone younger than me too. Which took me ditching my ego and learning from, and he was one of the best listeners I ever worked for. And, I had to like then set expectations internally with my leadership team about what's to happen. What are the risks? As scary as it was, by just attacking it head on, it made it go away. I felt better because when we keep that negative energy inside us, all it does is just erode. And I think of like, setting expectations also leans into what chapter 4 is about, is around documentation, which is usually sellers hate that because, I just want, my boss is making me document. They're on my case. And which is the most horrendous attitude to have, sellers. Documentation made me look way smarter than I am. I documented everything about everything I'd ever learned, their pets, where they went to college, their favorite food, their beer, their coffee, everything. And I'd always use what I documented as to lead with the next conversation. So like, for example, back to expectation management, let's say I'm working with you, Jason. Jason says, hey, Casey caught me at a bad time. Call me in 2 weeks. Okay. I have two choices right there. Either I document it and say that, and say why Jason needed to call me in 2 weeks, or I just wing it and write it in my hand. Oh shoot, I showered. All my notes went away. What did I write in my hand? I don't know what I was supposed to do. Right. So then I call in 2 weeks. Jason, hey, it's Casey with Winning the Relationship. I'm calling per your advice, per our conversation we had back on April 10th, is now a good time. Just that alone showed I listened, I documented, I followed up, and I'm just following what you told me what to do versus taking the guesswork out of it by calling to quote, check in quotes, because like whenever we call to check in, sellers, if you're listening still, remind yourself that you might as well say, I'm calling to waste your time, Mr. Client. I'm calling to waste your time. You got a minute? Don't check in. Checking in was cool in like 82, back when Chest Fuzz was cool. Okay. Call with a purpose. Call with something you learned in the previous conversation. Call with something that you read about in the newspaper. Call with somebody that's in their industry and use curiosity to ask a question. And if you find something that someone else is good at or they want to talk about, most likely they're going to engage with you. So I mean, expectation management, it's a hot button for me because I've been on the other end of it where, like, for example, out to my left, I have a small landscaping project that I've been waiting for that to get done for the last 5 weeks. My sales rep at this landscape company, I won't throw them under the bus, put them on blast, but they said, yeah, hey, this person's going to be in touch. They'll be following up with you. Haven't heard from them since. Haven't paid the last part of the bill. I'm like, until it's just like, it doesn't need to be that difficult. And these are things we have control over too.
Yeah. Yeah, you have 100% control over that. The way that, let me know what you think of this. The way I've always thought of this is, how could I model to this prospect that I would be a really good person, like on their team? Like if they were considering bringing me on as a peer, or if it's a VP, someone that's helping them run their team. And as a rep, it's like, how are you modeling someone that would be an ideal employee for them? Because most employees suck. Like you look at any organization, most of the people are average or below. It really doesn't take that much to differentiate yourself. And if you show the prospect that, hey, dude, I want to show you that I'm the type of person that you would want to hire if you could.
I love that. It's a great mindset. It's a great mindset to have. Yeah, there's a former Los Angeles Dodger manager named Tommy Lasorda, and one of my favorite quotes I'll share with teams. I love that and you made me think of it now, Jason. He said, "There's three types of people in life: people who watch things happen, people who wonder how things happen, and then people who make things happen."
Yeah.
And like, what bucket are you going to be in? Like, pipelines aren't going to fill themselves. Phones aren't going to dial themselves. Emails aren't going to send for themselves. I guess if you use automation and bots, maybe they can. But yeah, again, that's only going to work for so long until they realize there's no one behind the technology doing something for you. You know, I think that's what I love about relationship selling. I know there's probably people who are listening that might disagree eventually, because I've seen it out there on LinkedIn where people say that, it's the relationship game's over. I totally disagree. The feeling where you can have that Maya Angelou moment, I say, when it's not what I said, why I said it, but how I made you feel when you leave a conversation, that is so powerful. The curiosity that you can show in somebody through your tone, your body language, your empathy, and your voice, that will never be replaced by technology. In my opinion, one man's opinion. And I'm in my mid 40s. I'm going to keep doing this the way I know it's worked for me my whole life. I still adopt technology, but that human connection that we have all missed over these last 2 years, there's a reason why we're humans. We like connecting with people. We like interacting with people, and we like, the experiences you can get when you talk to people. It's infectious when you have the right people around you. So I think your mindset that you would teach your reps, I think it's awesome. Is like, yeah, make yourself hireable. Like, what would you do that would impress that person so much to say, man, I wish that person was on my team. I wish my seller sold like that. That's a great one.
Yeah, it's just effort. I think do you ever encounter reps that are fearful of like doing too much? For example, like they're self-conscious about, I know this person's favorite coffee. How about I send them a gift card, for their favorite coffee shop or something, where they feel like it's going too far. Do you ever encounter that? Because that's something I relate with.
So when I love you asked me that, because now, I don't know if this is going to be a video podcast, but people, if you're not on video, there's a sign behind me that says the word believe. And it's a little bit Ted Lasso, a little bit Seattle Mariners run last year, where they gave out believe signs, and I loved it. And so when I work with my clients, I talk about the word belief, and we have to believe what we do matters. And if you don't start the day believing what you do matters, and it can help solve a problem, it can help provide value to somebody, then you should be doing what you're doing. And you should try to find out why are you not believing? And so for someone who's questioning themselves through negative self-talk about, I shouldn't do that, or I should do that, I would say, man, tell me what's changed. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? I said, well, you told me 2 weeks ago you believe what you do matters, but the fact you're thinking about all these things that have nothing to do with anything other than your own head, you're stopping yourself. So if you believe that it will help someone, then go do it. Your intentions are right. Your heart's in a good spot. You can't control whether they like it, accept it or not. But if you're doing it because you want to serve somebody, I teach people to have a boomerang mindset too, right? Keep serving people, keep with goodness, but don't keep score.
Yeah.
You do enough good things to people, it's going to come back to you.
Yeah. It's it's interesting how that works. Where do you draw the line in your life with giving too much to people that may not be deserving of it? How do you think about that?
That's a good question. You got the GC out of me, brother. I think for me, if I see somebody, if I've done someone for something, and once or twice, but if like the third time I see him like just like zero thanks, zero gratitude, zero appreciation, just assuming that this is what I'm going to be doing every single time, then I choose that I have a choice to spend time elsewhere. And then maybe I'll slowly let that relationship kind of fall out of that top 5, top 6. They're still going to be an acquaintance, but maybe they're not going to be someone I'm going to spend a lot of time with. Again, I won't make a too huge deal about it because again, I can't control that. To me, again, if I go back to just following my core fundamental values of things that I care about, that know make up what I care about, that I know will help create great human beings. Like those, if I focus on that, usually things are going to take care of themselves. At least for 46 years of life they've have. Hopefully I didn't just jinx myself that tomorrow it stops working. Right. But yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. It's something I've personally struggled with. For most of my life have been very much a giver, but doing it to the point to where I'm not even really thinking about myself at all. I don't suspect that most sellers are probably in that position where they are giving so much that they need to check themselves. I suspect that just in my anecdotal experience, it's typically the opposite. But because this whole kind of podcast, the theme has been around stuff that kind of blending your personal and your professional life, like with similar values, right? Taking a value-based approach to it. And yeah, this is just something I think about a lot because it does kind of suck. And there are people that maybe, for example, I've been friends with for over a decade, but, I'm on this path where I'm growing and, trying to be a better person and all this other stuff. And they haven't changed in the last 10 years. And hey, the relationship was built upon me doing a lot of the work and everything, all the coordination and, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's been kind of hard for me, to really kind of wrap my head around.
My wife is a beast. She's so organized, so detail oriented. She's the planner. She puts everything together. And I remember at times, like early before we had, kids were young, she'd be the one to put all these events together with friends and family. And I think people just assumed it was just going to happen because Carrie had figured it out and she's good. And then I think sooner or later, my wife said, I don't want to have to do this every time. I said, then don't.
Yeah.
Someone else will step up. Right. But if you keep doing it, that's on you.
Yeah.
And, someone else will do it, honey. Trust me. And sure as you know what, someone else stepped up, and it's okay to say, hey guys, I don't have time to plan this. I need someone else to do it. We got stuff going on. Like she's taught me the power of saying no, which I think is a great skill set that sellers should be, get comfortable doing. Because every seller wants to say yes. Every seller wants to be liked. Every seller wants to be able to go do something for their client. But like I share a story in the book around an opportunity where I was calling a guy and he gave me a great opportunity. And I knew, and as I dug in through discovery, I realized, shoot, timeline's too tight. Risk is too great. I got to walk away from this thing. It sucks. I have to walk away from it. And I remember going back to him and I told him that we're going to walk away. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, I don't want to be the guy when you're in Las Vegas at this event and you're thinking, Jacox. Oh yeah, that was that tool sales guy that freaking overcommitted and then screwed me and had the application come down at this event. Yeah, give him a call. Great guy. I'd rather you say it was actually refreshing hearing a salesperson be honest and say they'd rather have their loyalty, their reputation, more than, a $10,000 commission check they might get. But in the end, they're going to lose a relationship and all the negativity that's going to come from that person I pissed off. Yeah. So, power of no is and there's a great book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown, if you ever read it around.
Oh yeah. Killer book. Yeah. I think learning how to say no is really powerful too, because learning how to gracefully reject someone makes you better at taking rejection. I think a lot of sellers, they take rejection really personally because they don't think about what it's like to be someone that has to reject people. Like most prospects don't, unless they're freaking sociopaths, they don't get enjoyment out of like shutting down salespeople. This is why prospects lie. Yeah, right? I mean, how many times have you lied to a salesperson? I'm making a big assumption here, but you've probably told people that call me back. Yeah, definitely call me back, that you didn't really want to call you back. You've probably done that at some point, I would imagine. Correct me if I'm wrong. I catch myself doing it all the time still, and it's just like, because I just don't want to say, like, if I don't like someone, I'm not going to say that to their face. I'm not going to be a jerk to them. But I'm like, yeah, send me an email,
I will say that I am, because I get, I'm sure you do too, I get a lot of LinkedIn requests. I can tell when they're fake. It drives me nuts. And the one I had to give feedback to this person, he reached out to me. He says, Casey, love your profile, love your background. I'd love to work with you on trying to help you publish a book.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, I already wrote a book. You obviously obviously didn't take any time to do just a teeny bit of research.
Yeah.
Now, if you would have let, hey, I want to connect, Casey. I'd love to learn more about the process of how you wrote your book, When the Relationship Not the Deal. Boom. I'm accepting that one.
Yeah.
I'm making time because he did a little effort. But when people don't, and I think it's as us as sales leaders, or if people are selling us service, it is our responsibility to say no, because you're actually going to save yourself time, because all you're doing is delaying the inevitable.
Yeah.
They're going to call you back versus I'd say, hey, you know what? Like I had a guy, he hardcore tried to sell me on him hiring him having me hire him as a coach. And I was like, and so I tried to like explain what I'm doing and gaps. And he kept like giving me all the features, benefits, and reasons why, and all the things I'm going to get out of it. But he never tied it back to a problem that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. It goes back. That's why it goes back to like things I wrote about, like listening, hearing, I don't know. This stuff's fun, man.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick about listening, because we could have spent a whole hour talking about listening, but it's something you talk about a lot. Yeah. And it's this, don't just hear your customers, listen to them. Mm-hmm. What are kind of your top tips on how to become a better listener? And maybe start with what is good versus bad listening? What does good look like?
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you what bad looks like. Bad looks like if you're talking to me, I'm listening, I'm looking at my phone. Yeah, Jace, keep going. Wait, what'd you say? Or you ask me a question and my notification, my phone goes off and I look at my watch. I just sent a message to you that I got to go. My clock's, or you tell me that you went to Oregon State and I call you up and I'm like, hey dude, how's life as a Husky? How's UW going? You're like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Like you're not listening to anything that they told you, and you're losing all those small little nuggets of wisdom and information that you can use to build a relationship. Listening is conscious. Hearing is subconscious. We subconsciously hear everything. I just heard an annoying dog in my house bark. I can either give her the attention or choose to ignore her. I'm choosing the ignore. Listening is eye contact. It's asking a question and shutting up, giving space for them to answer something back to you. It's following up with a follow-up question, which I follow a framework called TED, Tell Me, Explain, Describe, which is absolute gold. And I learned it at 41 years old. I wish I would have learned it in my 20s. But that framework, Tell Me, Explain, Describe, all my questions I like to use start with that, allow me to become a better listener. Now, if they're sales leaders, you're looking for an activity, I'll give you a free tip here that I've used in some of my workshops that I stole from someone else that is so powerful. So imagine if you get your sales reps in a room, 20 of them, we all pair up. So imagine, Jason, you and I are paired up, and your job is to tell me, and we set the timer for a minute. And so your job is to tell me tell a story about something that's important to you, just recently in your life. My job is to make you feel like a turd in a punch bowl, like make you feel worthless. I'm not even going to look at you. I'm going to be like, wait, what'd you say? I'm going to grab my phone. I'm going to be writing stuff down. And your job is to keep going, right? After a minute, the moderator or leader will go, Jason, how'd you feel? And you're most likely going to say, that sucked. It was so hard. I didn't feel like Casey cared about me. He looked distracted.
Yeah, it sounds brutal.
Yeah. And the question I'll say is, think about how often we do that every day to people internally, to our customers, when they can't see us on Zoom or Face or Teams. We're doing too many things. Now we reset the timer for a minute. Jason, tell the same story. Casey, use TED-based framework and ask questions. Dig deep on why that story is so important. And the gift is the moderator or the sales leader, he or she will not stop the clock at a minute. And you'll watch the energy will start rising in the room. You can hear it. People will keep talking. All of a sudden it gets louder. All of a sudden there's some laughter. And then as the moderator, I'll stop at like the 4-minute mark. I'm like, all right, guys, minute's up. How was that? And be like, oh, it was awesome. That was so cool. I mean, I had no idea about this person and blah, blah, blah. And I said, guess what? We didn't go for a minute. We went for 4 minutes. And think about that experience you just had. You have control over that. if you give that to the prospects, your teammate, your leader, your wife, your husband, your friend, your daughter, your son, if you choose to, and be uncommon, or keep being like every other person who's average or below average and going through life, not being present, not listening. But I tell you, man, when people listen and I can see it in their eye contact, it is the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. Most people don't get that on a daily basis. Most people don't get that from the people in their family, even, and it's such a huge, I like what you said. It's to give them the gift of listening and feeling understood. Mm-hmm. Oh man. You're totally right. There's nothing that feels better than that, dude. Especially if you have had a significant other or someone in your family or growing up or whatever, and people didn't listen to you, which I'm sort of fortunate that I do have family and a good spouse that listens to me way better than I listen to her. Most people don't experience that. They don't have that, and it's like you're that one person that can be like that really positive, give them some really good positive vibes, make them feel really heard and understood.
Yeah. Next time you go to a restaurant, just look around. Look around at how many poor listeners there are. I was at a restaurant last week, my wife and I saw there was two people at the table. They were friends. One guy was like telling his friend the story, and she had her phone right in front of her face, like 3 inches up, and I'm like, what a joke.
Yeah.
And the guy kept going. I would have stopped and said, hey, let me know when you're ready to meet.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go. And again, these are simple things that will dramatically impact the relationships you have. And hearing, listening is one thing, but it's what do you do with that information? Where are we documenting it? Where are we putting it? What are we gonna do when we talk to that person again? Are we gonna bring up something they shared as our first or second question? And if you do that, I would be willing to bet a lot of money that they're gonna be like, how'd you remember that? Oh, hey, thanks for asking. That was so cool. Yeah, we talked about that last time, Jason. You told me about whatever,
Yeah.
Not rocket science, but simple things. Yep. And those are things that I did for years and still do to this day that help me win people.
Yeah. Love it. Well, hey, we're almost out of time. I want to make sure we get to these rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Let's go. Lightning round, baby.
Okay. If you had to choose between phone, email, and social, so think just for prospecting, what do you pick and why?
I'm going to pick phone because I can control the tone and empathy in my voice.
Love it. What is something you believe about sales that most would disagree with?
Sellers aren't all liars. Sellers can be honest. And I'm proof of it that you can be.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to yourself as a rookie sales professional?
Practice, practice, practice. I would find the top people in any company I'm at, and I'd take them to lunch, and I'd ask them the same question you just asked me. Tell me, I'd do it in a framework I call give two, take two. Tell me two things you wish you love doing now in your job, and tell me two things you wish you would have done differently at my age, at my job, at my stage of my career. And then just go attack those things.
Yeah, that's great advice. Before you take off, I just want to remind everyone that's listening, like the show, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that sort of thing. But Casey, where can people go to connect with you, learn more about what you're up to, grab your book, all that good stuff?
Yeah, the best way I would say is either via LinkedIn. Love connecting with people. So if I said something other than chest fuzz that made you giggle and be intrigued, encourage me to connect there, or you can connect with me at just my website, which is caseyjacox.com. There's links to my podcast. There's links to learning more about the book. There's links to videos about other customers who have engaged with me. But the book is on Amazon. You can get it in Audible, Kindle, or paperback.